What is going on, everybody? King of Chaos, Logan Black here, and you're checking out Dude. Have you heard this? It's the music show where a bunch of friends sit around and talk about weird, obscure, sometimes pretty mainstream albums that we feel fell under the radar, and we just get to gush all about them. With me, as always, is Johnny Torres and Scotty Cerriti. Go ahead and say hello, guys.
What's going on, everybody?
What up, y'all?
And joining us this week, none other than Ref Gina, bringing all this awesomeness to the show. How are you doing, Gina?
I'm doing okay, but I'm not sure how you all are going to feel about me for the album that I chose. So we'll get into that soon.
That's going to be an interesting one. But you know what? Let's not make it soon. Let's make it right now. Let's hop into your album first. Let's go for it. Gina, let us know what album you chose and why you chose it.
Okay. I chose a Judas Priest album, and I chose one that apparently went on for 4 hours. So that's always great. I forgot there was 2 discs to it. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. It's a long one. So it's the Notre Dame album. It is a conceptual album just about Notre Dame himself, who was a pretty cool dude who wrote quatrains about the world ending and stuff. So of course, Judas Priest has to write an album about it. So that's really the main gist of it. Have I also mentioned it's 4 hours long? I just wanted to drive home that emphasis there.
Well, why did you pick this one in particular over literally anything else in the Judas Priest catalog?
Yeah, it was a kind of a toss-up between that one and Firepower, which is the most recent, I believe. This one I thought was just kind of cool because like I don't really see a lot of conceptual albums get like this much production value for this one to especially have like a 2-disc set. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And I felt like the flow of the album kind of just went through the history of Notre Dame's life as far as like we know. This is a person who lived like so long ago. So, like Judas Priest, I feel like does a lot of historical songs as well. There's one that he writes about Traitors Gate, which is relative to the Tower of London, London Bridge. I don't know. Maybe he'll write a song about people dying there. Like, who knows? So, I just thought it was just kind of different. A lot of people don't really seem to know this one as much. And when it comes to like albums, I like some storytelling to it. And that's something that I'll probably mention a little bit later when we talk about the other choices here too. So that's my reason why I chose that one.
So, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts on this album. It's weird you brought this one up. I remember when this album came out, I saw them on this tour. And my father bought this album like the day it came out. He's a huge...
Oh, really? Yeah.
So beyond that, I also wanted to mention, I listened to Unleashed in the East, which is Judas Priest, I believe their first live record. I listened to that album literally every single weekend from age 12 to 17.
Oh, that's a long time.
On vinyl. I'd go into my uncle's basement. He had it on vinyl. I'd hit play, and I'd mute Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and that was my soundtrack for it. Literally.
I think all of us kind of did that with Tony Hawk, though. Even though those soundtracks are good, but...
Oh, no, they're brilliant. Yeah, but like, specifically when I've got, like, that album and, like, everything of early Van Halen and then Blizzard of Oz, it's like, yeah, I don't need anything. But I want to hear what you guys felt in this one. Scotty, I know that you dug this one. Lay it on us.
I did. Well, first, I really love concept records, and I think that comes from one of the first metal albums I remember buying myself, being Abigail by King Diamond. Secondly, Judas Priest after 2005 is as close to the best that they have ever been. Other than the concept of the record, other than the length, these are guys who, A, know what they're doing, but still bring something a little new to the table every record they throw down. And I don't care that it was 4 hours long. I enjoyed every minute of it. Every minute of it.
There was a lot for me to like about this. So again, you guys know how I operate when it comes to my compliment sandwich with these with a lot of the music that like
compliment sandwich.
It's the compliment sandwich. It's the way that I see it. So I am such a huge Judas Priest fan. I've seen them live so many times. This is 2008 when this album comes out. And Rob Halford has been rocking since the late 60s. And his voice has not, like, his voice is on. It is amazing how he goes. And I'll give the credit to Bruce Dickinson, who's, equally as ancient. But, Bruce's voice is certainly kind of, drifted away. Ozzy's voice was done 2 years into Sabbath's career. But hot damn, can this guy still hit all the notes?
Yes.
With that said, there was a little bit in here. We've gone through this on the show before. I don't like tracks that are just like, all right, we're gonna set a mood with just like mood sounds. Hate it. Just fucking give me that music. Fucking kick me in the teeth with it. That's where we're going. And there was a lot of those like interludes for like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and it's just like, man, just give me just give me that stuff. Johnny, what'd you think about this one?
So you know me, man. Like my roots are in prog metal for the most part. Like I'm a Dream Theater kid since 2006, give or take. So Judas Priest heading in this direction was like welcome to me. Like give me people that are experts in speed metal, and then throw in some synth, throw in some choirs. Lot to really like on this. This was definitely like kudos to them for taking a really aggressive initiative towards trying to stretch their boundaries, because like they could have coasted on just making thrash by numbers for the rest of their careers, collected a couple $1 million and called it a day. But they decided to make a big old concept record based on a historical figure. I have to wonder, like, when they're putting this album together, like, they had to have gone and listened to like all of the greats of prog metal from the 90s and 2000s, because they seem to have hit like all the formulas that like Dream Theater carved out and refined is like, this works for prog metal. Judas Priest takes that and makes it theirs, but like they don't like they still have their identity, which is something you lose sometimes when you make this kind of big old shift from going to pure speed metal, going to this symphonic speed metal sound. So for them to retain that trademark Judas Priest ripping and tearing guitar sound whenever they hit a solo, like that to me is bonus points. Some of these tracks might have been a little longer than they had to be, but I kind of just chalk that up to Glenn Tipton and KK Downing just letting the external elements that they had at their disposal just run their course. So like the fact that like War and Revelations were both like 7 minutes long, it's like they didn't have to be, but I get why they were, and that's okay. Like
right.
Yeah, I this is one I could go on about for a while. I only have notes on disc 1. I did listen to both of them, but like if I took notes on both of them, I would have had like 3 pages worth of notes, and that would have been exhausting. So, Really, really cool dive into a side of Priest that I guess you just don't think you'd ever see unless you knew it was there.
Right. I think so. One of the things, for me, as much as like this was, could have been here, could have been there, there's a lot to like, that kind of turned me off from it. I got to give credit in being the aging punk that I am to be like, yeah, I appreciate this band not making a metal by numbers record and going, we're going to do something different. We're going to do some concept. We're going to have fun doing something totally different. And Gina, you might be able to help me with this. This is their first concept record, or am I wrong?
That's a good question. I would imagine it is, but
like
that's kind of like a hard thing to even consider, because I think that there's a lot of tracks that they just make that's just conceptual regardless. But I believe it is, but if not, well, they produce a lot of music, so
there was a couple of other records after this that might have at least felt more conceptual. But I know this was definitely a concept record, which is, again, for a band that like very specifically was trying to write metal anthems and did write a ton of metal anthems. Like this is, high concept stuff. But again, I'm just, as a Priest purist, as somebody who just wants to hear Exciter for fucking 9 tracks straight, hearing like the synth and keyboards, just like, oh, come on, guys. Just add another guitar if you can, But still, lots of respect for what they were doing on this one. With that said, let's we have ratings for all these albums that we picked. So for Nostradamus by Judas Priest, Gina, what is the? Actually, let me get to everybody before we get to you,
All right.
because you're the one who picked it. Johnny,
Okay.
what did you rate this Judas Priest album?
Oh, 7 out of 10 times you wore a spiked collar, a leather cap, and a medieval tunic in public in 2008.
Scotty.
7 out of 10 hell-bent for leather singles.
All right, this is another mouthful. So I gave it 6.5 out of 10. Homophobic metalheads who didn't realize their entire sense of fashion came from the leather daddy scene.
Mine
It's
was
the truth.
dumb.
If you're a metal guy and you're a homophobe, fuck you. Well, fuck you first of all.
Yeah.
But also, simply put, your entire sense of everything comes from the fact that Rob Halford was into that shit. So
Yeah, right.
Gina, what is your rating for this one?
I also gave it about like a 7 out of 10 apocalypses. One word. There you go.
I'm all for it. Before we move on, any other questions, comments, concerns, or feelings about Nostradamus? All right, let's hop into Johnny's pick this week. And Johnny is going back to a popular band among the show at this point. Lay it on us, dude.
So, first of all, got to call it out that it's cool to have that this is kind of callback week now. Scotty's pick is a return to an artist. Yours was on Roadrunner United. So, yeah, it's callback week. So, without further ado, this is the 2017 classic After the Party by the Menzingers. This album was incredibly pivotal for me in terms of where I was in my life when this came out. I was 27 years old when this came out. This is naturally a whole record that's kind of about like, hey, 20s are coming to an end. What you gonna do? You're almost 30. And totally changed my mindset and shifted like my career path and pumped the brakes on actively wrestling. And like this album really had a lot to do with like putting me in the mind state for that. So in terms of sentimental value, right off the bat, I mean, it hits for me from Telling Lies onwards. But then you start looking at like the value that this has to their overall catalog, because there's so much maturity in this record. The 4 chords that don't love you no more, you know, substitute chords with pro wrestling moves, and that hits a whole bunch of us right in the solar plexus, man. Yeah, yep. You know, they call back to their own catalog. House of Fire is a prequel to Ava House from Of the Impossible Past, which was from a earlier episode of this show. In terms of the amount of ideas covered in this record that I've come across in my own life, between, you know, being late 20s, early 30s, between, you know, the boy blue and the silver spoon, found him dying in the living room. You know, there's a lot of that going around. I think this record just hits home in every single way, be it a positive or a negative way. But I don't know, it's just helpful to know at that point in time that like, oh, there's somebody else that kind of knows. So in that regard, you know, Menzingers get it, man. I can't gush enough about this one.
Yeah, this was the first Menzingers record that I listened to that was like, this is a Menzingers record. So, you know, it's no mystery. Chris, my tag partner, humongoid Menzingers fan. Whenever they have anything coming out, that's what we're listening to on road trips. So when this came out, well, that's what we were listening to. So I listened to this record every week for like the better part of like 2-3 months. So this was revisiting this and listening to it like more serious instead of like blaring on car speakers in the middle of conversations about like wrestling or ring psychology. This is me sitting down and going, all right, let me listen to every single word that Homeboy is saying. And Johnny, goddamn, you hit it on the fucking head. He speaks to I think when you talk about bands that speak to generations, like when fucking Kurt Cobain sat there with the Here We Are Now, Entertain Us, spoke to an entire fucking generation of kids, I genuinely feel like this album speaks to our generation right now and where we're at. And then, I mean, I think, you know, their follow-up to this is very much does the same deal. But holy moly. I'm going to continue to gush after I give it to somebody else. Scotty, lay it on us. What did you think of this record?
I love this album. I'm really glad I heard it now as opposed to when it had first come out, because I'm a little closer now to that grim reminder that my 20s are ending than I was then. And it's weird. It's relatable in the sense that it's relatable to us now, whereas someone like Jeff Rosenstock was relatable to us when we were in our teens and in our 20s, and even still now, because we kind of grew with him. But the Metzingers are kind of bringing their own pace to the maturity of the records, and that's what I think is really cool.
Yeah, man, it's again, I can't gush over the fact. Literally, so 2017, I turned 30. So like, man, that was just, you know, where are we gonna go now that our 20s are over? It's just, man, oh, it just hit right in the heart. And then everything else on this record, just lyrically, is so much there. But they're just the songs are just so well put together as well. Like, again, we can gush about the lyrics, we can gush about all that, but the songs are there too. And I really think it's why this band really, really has the level of success that they do. Gina, lay it on us. What did you feel about the Menzingers?
This was a really, really good album. It was solid the whole way through. I felt like out of the albums that were chosen for this particular episode, this one didn't necessarily have like the flow in between telling the story at the beginning and the end. It was just kind of like treating it as a repository, but I thought it was still fine. Like that's cool with me. It kind of had the feel sort of like a top album, but also like that B-sides kind of like chillness to it of we're just like, you know, also creating content, but it was good all the way through. I feel like there's certain albums in this type of like genre that kind of like fall into a trap of you have your better stuff like at the beginning, the first 3 tracks, and then your ending. Then the middle kind of gets like lost a bit, but I didn't feel that so much when I listened to it. I have to mention that the Bad Catholic song is like so awesome because I also watched the music video for it. The music video is such a good compliment to that track. I felt that the imagery in that song was just so good. It's very colorful. The choice of words and vocabulary that was used like throughout the album was also, I think, very reflective of the same thing that we're all talking about, like the edge of, 30. Like, what's kind of happening. I felt like when I was listening to this as well, it kind of like set me in the mood. Like you could just sort of like drive off into like some road that's like kind of away from people and just think as like you're driving and like listening to this whole album. And the time will just like go like by really fast. And you're just like, where did that time go? And I felt like that was kind of like the overall theme of just like what the album was about too. Like, where did the 20s go? Oh, well. Here we go. Let's go on to the next one.
It's over. We're moving on.
Yeah, we're moving on.
It's, man. Oh, I'm really glad that like all of us just got like the same feel for all this stuff. Obviously, for me, sticking out, Telling Lies is gonna stick out because that's just such an anthem. Midwestern States, what a hook! Oh my lord! Again, as great as they are lyrically, the fucking songwriting is there. This band really does get it. It's why, like, I know people will gush over a band like Spanish Love Songs, and I think that they're pretty good too, but, like, their songs are fucking nowhere near as catchy as
one thing is when I was reading about just Menzinger's literature, I've noticed that they call them and the Gaslight Anthem Heartland Punk. So yeah. I like that a lot for those 2 bands. And then Spanish Love Songs can remain in the craft rock realm there. You have to earn your way into Heartland Punk.
Yeah, you know what? I think, again, these guys are probably closer to Gaslight Anthem for me as well. Even though I don't get the country vibe that I do from Gaslight Anthem, which is, I think, why I like Gaslight Anthem so much. Going back to songs, it's Charlie's Army and then Bad Catholics, like Gina said. Man, like, Bad Catholics is...
That's a hit.
I'm going to keep gushing about the fact that this band just fucking understands us.
Bad Catholics.
Yeah, like, he just...
always slipping out before communion.
Gush about these guys.
Yeah. Right. Well, one last thing I wanted to say, too. The Black Mass song, I also like that one because... when you hear it was like one of the slower tracks that didn't necessarily have like a swing beat to it, but it kind of almost did just from like the feel, like it just swung. I don't know. That's like the best description I could give it. And when you're listening to that for the first time, you just kind of like expect that there's going to be a build up towards the end of the song going into like some heavier type of bridge, but it didn't. And I kind of like appreciated that. Like, I feel like a lot of albums, they kind of don't understand like the importance of silence, or not like silence, but not as much noise in music. And that song was a good example of like how you could not make anything like super crazy, but still produce a good track.
And expanding on that a little bit, Black Mass is right in the middle of like the 3-track block where like they get probably the darkest they get on the record. Between
right.
House of Fire, Black Mass, and Boy Blue are probably like the 3 darkest tracks on the record. So to drop a track of a three block track of songs of dark subject matter, and for the album to not feel like it has like a lull or takes a dip like that, like credit where credit's due, man. Not everybody can do that.
Yeah, I agree.
I happen to think these guys are magicians as it pertains to music. They just, every album is just brilliant. With that said, we have ratings. So I'm going to go ahead and ask Gina, what did you give the Menzingers after the party?
All right, I get an 8 out of 10 stale Eucharistus, or what do you call them? Hosts. Something. I don't know. They're gross, man.
Oh, yeah.
Scotty.
But it was a good album.
9 out of 10 teenagers in flannel shirts at the town carnival.
Oh,
good.
man.
That's yeah.
I gave this one not. I wish my partner left her glasses up here because it's so much better if I had glasses on. Pretend I have glasses on. So 9 out of 10 craft beer recipes named after bands. Take those glasses off. You've probably never heard of. And Johnny, what did you rate this one?
Oh, man, for me, 10 out of 10 groups of 4 or more, all wearing the same color but different patterned flannels that you also saw at the Gaslight Anthem concert.
Brilliant.
Jeez, I'm never going to get good at these ratings.
Oh, but listen, we just, this is how we pass the time. I've definitely, written out and deleted so many of these. Any other questions, comments, concerns, or feelings about After the Party?
I think it's a good album to introduce people to the band.
Yeah, I think this is the one to introduce people to, and then you go. I'd probably go with the one prior to this one, just because that's like, here's where they came from, and then go with the most recent, because America and Anna are some of the best guitar-based pop songs I fucking ever heard.
Coming to
Anna
a future
especially.
episode.
What happened?
Definitely coming to a future episode.
When you pick that one, I'll pick the Third Life of Agony album. Maybe fucking Scotty will pick another Body Prince Billy album.
I could do that.
Oh, that just gave it away. Scotty, it's on you now. I just gave it away, but let us know what album you picked and why.
Yeah, 2005 Super Wolf by Bonnie Prince Billy and Matt Sweeney. Bonnie Prince Billy, who we know from The Letting Go, which I had previously done. Totally different sound on this record because all of the music was composed by Matt Sweeney, who was the singer and guitar player for the band Chavez. He was the first post-hardcore guitar player I'd ever seen finger-picking a guitar. Blew my mind the first time I saw it. Came down to 2 choices, and I ultimately picked this because a lot of people were excited that they might have been doing something for the 15th anniversary, because a B-side just got released around the time the album came out this year, though, and then nothing ever came from it. But I think it's a really interesting dynamic between this singer who gets lumped into, quote-unquote alternative country, and this guitar player who's known for this really abrasive, really progressive music, just kind of slowing down, and the lyrics are wonderful. I could go on forever about this record, but yeah, I love this album.
Yeah, man. So I want to throw it out there off the bat. I got, and again, you're going to look at me like I have fucking 10 heads. I got Temple of the Dog vibes with this one.
I can feel it.
Second track is where I was like, all right, I'm definitely hearing, like, it's not quite Eddie Vedder, it's not that voice, but it's still deep enough. And then I'm guessing it's Matt Sweeney kind of comes in with a more higher pitched Chris Cornell type stuff, and I'm just like, this sounds like some Temple of the Dog, and I was immediately like, all right, I'm fucking in with this shit. Johnny, what did you think of this record?
I'm laughing at you saying Temple of the Dog because in my notes here I said, this is like Temple of the Dog if you substituted Bonnie Prince Billy and Jay Mascis in place of Eddie Vedder and Chris Cornell. But
I get that.
definitely thought of Dinosaur Jr. multiple times while listening to this record. I thought I didn't know Matt Sweeney until I looked him up on Wikipedia and saw that he was involved in the Billy Corgan project Zwan. So
Snap.
yeah, so I was like, okay, I guess I do know this guy. But really, really cool. Like you were saying, Scotty, really different vibe from the first record there, which was a slower, more slower in general. Because this was like still slower, but like because Matt Sweeney was doing it, it felt like a more folky type accompaniment to go with it with Bonnie Prince Billy's vocals. Lot of really good stuff here. Folk singers have this, like the cream of the crop of folk singers have this gift of making like really slow, somber sounding songs with lyrical content, with like happy lyrics, and then vice versa, upbeat songs with like really sad lyrical content. And like Goat and Ram is one of the best examples of that I think I've ever seen, where like that's a fucking beautiful song that Who Are You Honey Love vocal part. I went back to that like 5 or 6 times. I was like, these two together like get it. Like sometimes you just get two musicians together like Brian Fallon and Matt Mays, like Eddie Vedder and Chris Cornell, and just magic happens. And that's what happened on this record, because like there's a lot of tracks I take away from this. The fucking harmonies in Rudy Foolish is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like yeah, I can go on forever.
What you said about the folk singers, I'll actually give credit to several of the musicians on the same label, Drag City Records. Bill Callahan, Jason Molina was on Drag City for a little bit, Alistair Roberts. All of these guys really do exactly what you're talking about with the faster song, but with the darker lyrics. And also, just on the tip of indie rock, because you had mentioned Dinosaur Jr., when I saw Bonnie Prince Billy live, Lee Ronaldo from Sonic Youth was 2 seats down from me. And that was the weirdest experience I've ever had in my life.
Yeah, so there was something that really stuck out to me on this. And I enjoy the music, but I always I can't name the tracks because like I always say, like a lot of the times I'm just not looking at the tracks. Some of the lyrics were, I don't want to say suggestive, but there was talking about fucking.
Yeah.
They were talking about fucking quite a bit. And again, all the power to them. But just like, that kind of took me by surprise. I was like, oh, well, cool. Y'all is talking about fucking. This is going to be
he oddly has the same sense of humor as someone like a Steve Albini does, where like you listen to like a Shellac or a Big Black record and something's not right, and it's just because Steve Albini's literally playing a joke on you for 5 minutes straight.
Brilliant. Gina, what did you think about this record?
All right, so I don't know this genre of music as well as everybody else. So I just kind of had to fall back onto listening to the poetry of it. The first time I went through it for like a 40-minute album, it's actually pretty dense, and I had to actually take breaks from it and kind of come back, because I didn't really expect that each track was going to be so lyrically heavy. With, again, like what I mentioned earlier in the Menzingers, like this has like imagery to the point where it's like you kind of like have the feel of like you're sort of like reading what they're trying to say. Like I'm not really, that's the best way I could like describe that. So the What Are You track was like the one that kind of surprised me with the suggestive lines. I was kind of just like, sitting there listening to it. And then as soon as like spanking was mentioned, like my eyes started like bugging out for a second. And I looked around, made sure I was like where I was. That really took me out of my element. I think it has a very strong intro. The intro song, Is It My Home Is the Sea? Yeah, I think this is a song. It was very rich. And I liked how, for me, I kind of like when parts are introduced into the song. So it was like a lack of percussion at the beginning, and then towards the end, it got like a lot fuller. One line that I really appreciate, unfortunately, I can't remember which. I think it's Blood Embrace. It was, and through her eyes, I will eat flowers. I don't know why, but like that line is like pretty good. So it's like one of those things that you just kind of like have to think and reflect. I imagine that maybe I would enjoy this album more if I like saw it live. I just feel like it's one of those things like you really shouldn't read a Shakespeare play if you're like trying to digest it for the first time. You should see it, and that's kind of like the vibe that I sort of got from this. So I think like the atmosphere, maybe being with other people, seeing them play, and seeing the technique, like how you mentioned Scott with the guitar, the finger picking, that probably would have brought some more value to it. But it was definitely a different album for me to listen to. But around the second time when I had to listen to it, when I was like trying to get over like the not weirdness, but like the uh, foreignness, I suppose, of like, oh, I've never really listened to something like this. I started to sort of get like what it was about, and I still don't understand it. So I don't know. Maybe I'll take it a couple of times.
You used an excellent word to describe it, where you said it was dense, and I think
It
that
is.
is like such a great adjective to use related to this, because really, what is Scotty? What is it? It's a guitar and two vocalists, right? For the most
That's it.
part.
That's
Right.
pretty much it.
But
And
great atmosphere, and it's really great in terms of the atmosphere it creates.
I'll give all the credit in the world to Will Oldham, because there are certain, I know there's a couple albums he does that are just solo guitar and voice, and there are some that he does with bands. But when he does the solo guitar and voice stuff, he had a song in True Detective that the first season that set the mood so perfectly, and it was a dark first season for that series. It's incredible what he can do with just six strings and a voice.
I absolutely agree. With that said, we've got some ratings for this one. Let's start with you, Johnny. What did you give the Bonnie Prince Billy and Matt Sweeney collaboration?
8 out of 10 guitars that may not have all their strings, but they make it work.
Gina, what did you give this one?
This is a weird rating. I gave it a 6.5 out of 10 old men in the seas. Because for some reason, there's a lot of like sea imagery in this, and for whatever reason, I was thinking of that book like when I was listening to it.
I think it's great. I gave this one 8 out of 10 songs that are definitely way too sexual for my virgin ears. And Scotty, what did you give this one?
I gave this one 9 out of 10 harmony sections that still confuse me to this day.
Yeah.
With that said, any other questions, comments, concerns, or feelings about this record? Cool. Let's close it out with my pick for the week. I chose the second album from the band Life of Agony. It was entitled Ugly. This is a band that is from my hometown of Brooklyn, New York. But they're, an internationally well-known band. We're not talking local music here. This album, holy moly. So, again, I feel like if you are someone who listened to heavy music in the 90s, like very heavy music, and we're looking for like maybe something a bit heavier than what was on the radio, you were checking out, your local scene. And Life of Agony and Madball and Sheer Terror and all those bands were all playing all the shows here in New York. But these guys always stuck out to me as an angsty kid who became an angsty teenager. This album in particular jumped out to me. Their first record is widely considered by a lot of people to be their best, and I happen to not be a huge fan of it. I understand why people like that first album, River Runs Red, but this album just feels like a band that was like, yeah, we could be heavy, but we could also write some songs. And I also feel like this is the record where the singer Mina Caputo gained her ability to just completely just harmonize and sing, because it was all chugga chugga type stuff on that first record, and then boom, we've got like some harmony, we've got like high notes on here that are just to this day I feel like they peel the paint off walls. This goes down as one of my absolute favorite albums of all time. But I would love to hear what you guys think of this one. I'm going to start with you, Gina. What did you think of Ugly?
I actually want to ask you a question first. So why
Sure.
do you feel like this is an like underrated, under the radar album? Because it doesn't sound like it at all.
Cool. So the reason that I think it's now that I feel Life of Agony is a band that legitimately just flew under the radar. They had their little bit of fame here and there. Like if you're a fan of like hardcore or metal of this era, you're like, oh yeah, Life of Agony. But when bands like, you know, Korn were making it, you know, really, really big and international stars, or like, man, I'm trying to think of like other bands of that era that were just like incredibly depressed bands. Like, these guys legitimately fell under the radar on that, and specifically this record, because their third record, Soul Searching Sun, had a number of like singles that did hit the radio. Their first record is, again, like, that's like a hardcore classic, but this one is one of those that, like, you know, the songs are popular amongst fans, but you never hear people talking about Ugly, and that drives me wild.
Okay. I just find it so surprising because when I put the album on, I immediately noticed that the production value was excellent. So it just sort of like kind of took me out for a moment, like, really, with this. But I'll take your word for it. So this one I felt out of the selections for this week, including Nostradamus, had the better flow from beginning to end, kind of like musically storytelling wise. Like it had a really great intro, great way to like set up the album. I really like how Regret had a really good break musically in the track. And like towards like the like third quarter of the album, it started to get like a little bit heavier. And of course you have that really awesome ending with the cover there. Long intro. I was just kind of like sitting there going, they can really like sing the song like this the whole way through, but like the payoff is like, oh, there it is. And yeah,
I'll say this
great.
much. That is the only track I ever skip on this record.
Really? Okay.
On this, it was one of those, if you remember how CDs used to work, where like the final track would happen, and if you didn't turn it off, like 10 minutes later, might be a hidden track.
Oh, yeah.
That's how
right.
this was.
Okay.
And I would always, right after Fears, it was like, off.
Yeah.
Don't like that cover. Continue.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Gina.
It's okay. But, you know, I thought that Other Side of the River was a really good change in the pace there, and that kind of like made me feel that this album was more diverse than, you know, I thought it was. So I think a really good word to describe this is robust. It was a very full, well-rounded album with some good variety in there, but the flow of it was really good. Like that one you could turn on, and I feel like you could get kind of lost between the tracks if you're not paying attention. Like, oh, like we're 30 minutes in already, and then like that. So that was the feeling that I got. It was a really good one. Good choice.
You're killing it today with the adjectives. You are wonderful vocabulary.
I'm an audiobook reviewer on the side, so I have to have the thesaurus next to me.
Other Side of the River, to me, I think once, like I had my favorite songs growing up, but Other Side of the River, as I started getting older, really stuck out to me in terms of just like every single part of the song, just like there's something there. Where again, at the end of the song, when the drums are blaring and mean it, where would be? I'm like, oh man, the wah wah guitar solo as, you know, things start to break down in there. Man,
I felt like it was definitely the most emotional track.
That one, I mean, we could go through Let's Pretend, How It Would Be. There's a lot of really emotional tracks on this record. This is a very emotional band, and I think that's why I loved them so much as a kid. Scotty, what'd you think of this one?
Like you had said, like this was a band that was definitely flexing their experimentation, kind of coming into their own, understanding what they sounded like as opposed to the sound of their peers. And weirdest comparison came into my head that like for a while there were these groupings of Roadrunner bands that would release 2 records and they were vastly different from one another. Sepultura with Arise into Chaos AD, or there was another one I had off the top of my head.
Fear Factory is another one if you didn't pick that one.
Yes, Fear Factory was the other one. And it very much, it kind of reminds me of SST Records, where all these bands started as hardcore bands, and then you kept going. You got Zen Arcade and Double Nickels on the Dime and My War, and it just completely changed everything for the sound of that label. And Life of Agony was still doing their thing in their genre, but killing it on this record. Killing it. I love this album.
Man, one of the other things that I really wanted to stress about why I think this record stands out so much to me, again, River Runs Red is very chuggy. There's anthems. but I feel like the guitarist Joey Z, who Nugget of Info produced my band's EP, the only band I ever recorded with Joey. I marked out for a week straight. His riffage is, it to me, in terms of like 90s guitarists, on the same level or above Helmet's Page Hamilton, who is like the standard bearer of fucking riffage. The riffs on this record are just top notch, and then when it comes time for him to turn that wah-wah pedal on, man, he just every single time just the bluesy, but then it gets metal, and it's everything about what he does in this record, I'm all for. Johnny, what'd you think about Ugly?
So my discovery of Life of Agony was really weird, because the first time I ever heard anything Mina Caputo was, besides Roadrunner United, besides that one track, did a feature on a symphonic power metal record by the band Within Temptation, and just had like a random guest vocal. And then so like didn't know who this artist was, went back and like, it's a band that started around the 90s, and I've never heard of any of this. And like was always surprised that like they never popped up in the new metal circles for me. They never popped up in like metal circles for me. Like they always seem to be like on the fringe of bands I would like but never checked out. Like they would be track 17 on a 16-track sampler that I picked up at a Hot Topic. Like, but really, really good revelation. Ugly in terms of how this band shifts phases, there's not many I've seen that are so smooth with it. Where just like that, they're into something else. Where like even like Dream Theater, Between the Buried and Me, bands that make their money off doing that, they even have like a little segment where they transition. This is just no flip on a dime. Ugly probably does it. The song Ugly does it like 3 or 4 times, and every single time just knocks me off my seat. What you were saying before also about the singer's Mina Caputo's maturing with this record, it shows, because like right on, I want to say it's the 3rd or 4th track, the first time I really get like the first clean flex where like I start hearing like a little bit of like Collective Soul clean vocals here, and I'm like, oh, this is not what I was expecting at all. And it's like the confidence grows throughout the rest of the record. Like the clean vocals only get better as the record goes. So it's a really organic record how it plays out, where it's like almost the story of a singer really like finding their chops. So lot to take away from this one.
I think this is really where the band was looking to find all of their chops as well. Like there's songs on here. It's not just let's fucking kick a bunch of fat angry kids in the pit. It's we're gonna write some angry songs. When we talk about the Menzingers being like the band that like, all right, this record is like that 29 to 31 transition. Lost at 22, when I discovered this record, I was like, I'm going to listen to this song on my 22nd birthday and see how I feel about it. And then, goddamn, did this song not describe my life at the age of 22? They keep on telling me I'm young, dumb, and naive, but that's just what they want me to believe. If that is not youth, I don't know what is. I can gush about this record for like 10 shows straight. This is, like I said, it's among my absolute favorites. Oh my god, this band is just the fucking best. Let's give our ratings out for this one. Scotty, what did you rate Ugly by Life of Agony?
I gave this 9 out of 10 goth kids in a St. Vitus pit.
Johnny, what'd you rate this one?
I gave this 8 out of 10 fedora bandana around the mouth combos.
You know what? That literally was the band when they reunited like 10 years ago. All of them. All of them. Gina, would you rate this one?
Mine's similar to Scott's. It's 9 out of 10 goth kids hanging out at the mall smoking.
Again, that was this band 10 years prior. I gave this one 9.5 out of 10 bands whose name perfectly indicates the lyrical content.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Wow.
One of the most depressing lyrical bands I've ever listened to. With that said, that's going to complete this show. Gina, we would love to have you back at another point sometime very soon.
Cool.
Maybe,
Yeah. I'll
maybe
make
we
sure
can
to
roll with
choose
that.
an album that's like 6 hours. It'll be Tool next time.
Oh my God,
No.
that might be the one that I can't stand Tool. I know I'll be outvoted on that one. It was like Tool, I'm like Anyway, but yeah, we'd love to have you back. But for now,
Thank
let's
you.
where can we find everybody on social media? Let's start with you, Johnny.
At the Concept JT on Twitter and Instagram.
Scotty.
Twitter, Instagram at SC Ceriti.
Gina.
I am also on Twitter and Instagram under the same title, Hard Copy Foo.
And you can find me on all social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at King of Chaos NYC. And this show happens to drop usually every Friday, although we took a break this week because you know wrestling. But it's on
Thursday
the
shows.
like Thursday, Friday. So listen, get that money, brother. If this showing up on the Year One Wrestling Podcast YouTube account, which means that you should be subscribed to that for all the stuff that we've got going on, and then you should check the podcast itself out. Gina was a guest on there. You can listen to her talk about all refereeing things, but you can check that out on literally wherever you get your podcast, and then find it on social media at Year1 Pod. For Johnny, Scotty, and our guest Gina this week, thank you guys for tuning in to Dude, Have You Heard This?